In task 1B part 1, you are asked to show evidence of a church form. And it says the form is going to be used to view, add and modify records about churches, and it needs to meet the following requirements. This is the sort of thing that we're looking for in a form, where you can actually see labels for the data and space to enter data for each field. And it says it must have a main heading of church details, so we're going to make sure it has that and that it is in the house style. It says fields should be grouped together appropriately with sensitive. So if we have a look, we've got data about the church, data about its address, and data about the contact. Scroll bars should be removed, so we're going to remove the scroll bars. And customized buttons should be added to enable addition and deletion of records, so there are our customized buttons. And this is the evidence that we need to show in terms of a screenshot. So let's go through what we need to do to complete this task. First of all, we are going to create a form, and we're going to use a form wizard. Now, the table that we're basing this form on is the church table, and we're going to put on all the fields, as you can see here. Now, we're going to leave it as a column form, and it tells us in the question that the form should be called church details, so I'm going to write church details here. And then we're going to finish. And you can see now we've got a very basic form that is set up for us, but we need to make it look like the house style, and we need to put in the things like subtitles and buttons that we're asked for. So first of all, let's go about putting some subtitles in. So if we change our view to design view, we can move things around a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move around the whole, draw around the whole lot and move it all down a touch. That will give me a chance to have a subtitle for church. Then I'm going to move everything except the church information down a bit, and that will allow me to have a subtitle of address. And then I'm going to put the contact details all together. Well, I've got at the moment the contact email address and contact mobile telephone number, so I'm just going to pull together this information, put it down with the contact details, so we've got all that together. Now, you don't have to do it in this specific order. It can be done however you prefer, as long as there are some subtitles and that they're sensible. So we use a label for a subtitle, so we just type in here church, and we can do the same here. Now I'm just going to show you what goes wrong if you use a text box. If you use a text box, okay, and then you start to type in here in the text box option here something like address, and you say, oh well, I don't need the label, so I delete the label. When you go to view your form, you'll see that it comes up with this name. That's because it doesn't know what address is, because we were putting that in within a text box, part of the control part of that text box. So that's why we just use ordinary labels. Okay, so here we have address, and then we can have contact details. Now I'm not going to bother tidying it all up, because you'll be able to cope with doing those things. What I am going to do now is I'm going to change everything to Times New Roman, because that is part of the house style. So we'll change this here, and I'm just going to start typing Times New Roman. I know everything's Times New Roman, and I know if some things are going to be red, but I'm going to make everything black, and that ensures that even the labels are made black as well. Now if we go back to our question, we can have a look at the house style that was mentioned earlier on in the question, so we can see the sort of house style that we need to set up. So we can see here our main headings are going to be in Times New Roman, 20 points, red and bold. So here we've already got Times New Roman, we need to change it to red, and we need to change to bold. Quite straightforward. Our subtitles needed to be 14 points and red and underlined. Now I can hold down multiple ones of these by holding the control key down, so red, underlined. Now what I have discovered is that these are still 11 and they need to be 12. If I try to draw around them, it catches up in my subtitles. So I'm just going to have to use the control key to deselect them. But you can see it would have been easier to have set it all up first. and of course these also needed to be 14, and you'll then notice that you'll get some truncation errors, so we just need to make sure that each of these text boxes is big enough to show all of the data. Next we need to have a look at the background colour, and it says it needs to be 238, 250, 180. Let's have a look at how we go about doing that. We click on this detail section here, right hand click, and we can now choose the fill or back colour, but you'll notice that it doesn't have an option to choose those numbers. So if you come up to the top of your screen where you've got format, you can now change the background colour here and click on more colours, and if you go to custom, you can now start to put in those numbers, which were 238, 250, 180. So 238, 250, 180. We click on OK, it's done our background nicely. Now for the form header, I can just use that colour that's been used already. We've done everything now except for our buttons and the other two requirements, which was to remove a couple of features. So next we'll add on the buttons. So if we go to our form design tools and select design, here's an option to create a button, and I'm going to draw the basic shape of a button. And what we want to do is be able to add a new record. Now although we're in form, it's not a form operation that we're doing, it's a record operation, because it's to do with being able to add a record and being able to delete a record. So we'll select add record, and we'll choose the text add record. The picture doesn't really help us, so I'm going to leave it with the text add record. Now you can leave this as command 28 or whatever it comes up as, but I find that sometimes you need to refer back to the buttons, so it's best to give them a name. You can't have spaces in it, so I'm going to call this button add, btn add. So we do exactly the same for delete record. So I go to my record operations, delete record, select the text, and then I'll go here, button delete. Now I just need to line these up now. You can use a grid to line them up, you can use alignment tools within the software, and I'm going to make sure that they're both the same length as well, just for tidiness sake. But I've still got other tidying to do over here anyway. Finally, we're asked to remove the scroll bars. Well, if we go back to datasheet view, okay, then we have scroll bars on here. Now you can't see them at the moment, so what we'll do is we'll resize access and make it a bit smaller than the form itself, and you can now see that these scroll bars are starting to appear, and it's these that they want you to remove. So we'll go back to our design view, and we're changing now the properties of the form. I'm just going to close this field list so that we can see everything, and we're going to change the properties of the form. So there's a little square up here, and when you click on it you get a little square dot. That means that you've now selected the form rather than anything on the form. So with that dot, right hand click and select form properties, and if you go to format, you'll then see there's an option down here to remove scroll bars. You've also got other options such as record selectors and the standard navigation buttons, but we'll remove those scroll bars and we'll say we want neither of them. Just close that property sheet, and now when I go back to datasheet view, you'll see the scroll bars aren't showing. That is task 1B, part 1, the form for the church, completed.